You know, in the Old Testament, there's this one simple little word for time that holds the key to a massive story about where we all fit into eternity. It's a word that seems so straightforward, but once you start to unpack it, you find this incredible tension that honestly shapes the entire biblical narrative. And get this single Hebrew word shows up almost 170 times. That tells you it's a huge deal for the biblical authors, a real foundational concept. So, what is it? What does it really mean? And why on earth is it so important? Well, on the surface, you'd probably translate it as generation, a bunch of people living around the same time. But if you dig just a little deeper, you realize its real story is so much bigger. It tells us about the very nature of time itself, about life and death, and about promises that are supposed to last forever. All right, so the Hebrew word we're talking about is dor, and it's so much more than just a way to mark time, like a year or a decade. For the people writing the Bible, dor was like the fundamental building block they used to make sense of the whole sweep of human history. Okay, so at its most basic, a dor is pretty much one human lifespan. Think of it as one complete cycle. You're born, you live, and you see the next generation born. It actually comes from the root word dur, which means to dwell or to go in a circle. So it connects the idea of a home, a dwelling place, with the cycle of life. It's one full turn of the wheel. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. The first way this word dower is often used is to describe how finite and, frankly, how flawed a single period of human time can be. It's used to draw a circle around a specific group of people, for better or for worse. For example, take Noah. The text says he was blameless in his generation. That little word, dower, sets him apart. It isolates his specific moment in time and says, okay, in this group of people, at this specific time, he was the one who was different. But way more often, dower is used to describe a group defined by its failures. A perfect and pretty grim example is the evil generation that wandered in the wilderness. Their entire dower, their whole cycle of life was marked by disobedience. And, because of that, they faced a collective consequence. They lived and died as a group, never setting foot in the promised land. And this verse from Judges, wow, it just highlights the most critical and kind of chilling part of this idea. A dower is temporary. It ends. It passes away. And all its knowledge, its faith, its memory, it can all be totally lost in just one turn of that generational wheel. But wait, that is only half the story, because the exact same word, dower, is used in the complete opposite way. It's not used to describe something that ends, but to describe God's eternal promises that never end. You see it a lot when the word is repeated, in the Hebrew phrase lador vador, which literally means from generation to generation. This isn't about one cycle anymore. This is about something that stretches across all of those temporary human cycles, connecting them together into one long, unbreakable chain. I mean, even God's own name and character aren't locked into just one dower. The whole idea is that they're meant to endure forever, passed down from one generation to the next, acting as this constant, reliable presence, right, in the middle of all the chaos of human history. This creates such a powerful rhythm when you read the text. You have this constant back and forth, this contrast between the fleeting, fragile nature of a single human dower and the absolute permanence of the divine promise that just keeps flowing right through every single one of them. So we've got a puzzle on our hands, right? How can one single word mean something so temporary and mortal, and at the same time describe something that's eternal and never-ending? How are we supposed to make sense of these two meanings that seem to be complete opposites? And here's the brilliant answer. The word dower itself holds the entire tension of the biblical story. It's not a contradiction. It's the whole point. It describes both things at once: the finite, temporary human experience on one side, and the eternal, unending divine promise on the other. It's both the container and the precious thing being carried inside it. And that brings us to the most important insight of all. God's eternal plan isn't happening off somewhere else, totally separate from our messy, complicated human history. No, it's actually woven through these individual, finite generations. Each jar, with all of its flaws, with all of its fragility, becomes the actual channel, the very vessel that carries God's everlasting covenant forward through time. So why does this one word matter so much? Because understanding Dar totally changes how you read these texts. It shows you that the Old Testament isn't just a random collection of stories. It is a single, unfolding story about an enduring promise. It tells us that history isn't just one random thing after another. It's a story with a purpose, and every single generation has a vital part to play in it.
And that, of course, leaves us with a pretty big and provocative thought. If every Dawar, every generation, is a link in this incredible chain, receiving a promise from the past and carrying it into the future, then we have to ask ourselves, what story is our generation contributing? What are we choosing to pass on to the next?